You walk through the front door, drop your keys, and before you've even sat down, your whole body unclenches, like you've been holding your breath for hours and you just remembered you're allowed to breathe. Nobody did anything wrong. Nobody said anything rude. You were just around people. And your body is treating it like you survived something. If that feels familiar, if you regularly feel more like yourself when you're alone than when you're surrounded by people, then something very specific is happening in your brain. And if the title of this video touched something you felt for years but never quite had words for, that's not an accident. There's a reason it found you. Stay with me, because by the end, a part of you that you've maybe been a little ashamed of is going to make complete sense. What you're about to learn isn't a flaw, it's not a deficiency, it's a wiring. And the neuroscience behind it changes everything. Here's the first thing almost everyone gets wrong about this, including, for a long time, the people who live it. They confuse solitude with loneliness. And those two things are not even close to the same experience. Loneliness is a deficit. It's what happens when your need for connection goes unmet. You can feel it in a crowded room, in a relationship, surrounded by people who never stop talking. Loneliness is a reaching, a quiet hunger your system can't satisfy. Solitude is the opposite. Solitude isn't something that happens to you, it's something you choose to enter. In genuine solitude, your nervous system isn't scanning for reassurance, it's settling, reorganizing. There's even a term for the specific frustration of needing time alone and not getting enough of it. Psychologists call it aloneliness. Someone who watched an earlier video told me about a moment he couldn't shake. Let's call him Daniel. He was at a dinner, good friends, good food, nothing wrong with any of it. He was laughing, joining in, doing everything right. And somewhere in the middle of it, he caught himself quietly counting down. Not because he wanted to leave the people, because he could feel himself thinning out like a signal losing reception. He stepped outside for 5 minutes of air. And in that quiet, he felt himself come back. He told me he spent years thinking that made him cold, or antisocial, or broken in some small way. He wasn't any of those things. His relationship with himself just isn't a placeholder he fills until better company arrives. It's a foundation, and foundations need quiet to hold. So here's where the neuroscience gets genuinely interesting. For a lot of people, social interaction is energizing. Their brain processes conversation at a comfortable, sustainable bandwidth, pleasant even. But for some people, every conversation runs on a completely different cognitive load. They're not just hearing words, they're tracking tone, micro-expressions, what wasn't said, whether the energy in the room just shifted, whether the person across from them is being genuine or performing. Picture it like browser tabs. Most people are running 2 or 3. These people are running 10 all at once, all the time. Of course the system heats up faster. Of course they need to step away sooner. That's not weakness. That's resource management. Researchers even have a name for what happens when the threshold gets crossed: a social hangover. That fogged, overexposed feeling after too much interaction, trouble focusing, irritability, a need for silence that feels almost physical. That's not avoidance. That's recovery. And once you understand the difference, the guilt starts to loosen its grip. You were never failing at being social. You were running more in every room than the people around you ever realized. There's a theory in psychology called the Savannah Theory of Happiness. The idea is that our brains still carry preferences shaped by our earliest environment: small groups, familiar faces, predictable rhythms. For most people, more social contact lines up with that ancient wiring. More connection, more satisfaction. But researchers found a striking exception, and it made me think of someone. Let's call her Maya. Maya is the friend everyone describes as a bit hard to pin down. She loves the people in her life, but after a full weekend of socializing, she doesn't feel topped up. She feels strangely flat, like something's been spent that she needs back. The research explains why. People with high cognitive complexity, minds that are constantly running simulations, questioning assumptions, building models of the world, often report lower life satisfaction when they socialize more frequently. Not because they dislike people, because their attention is always being pulled toward things that need uninterrupted focus. For them, socializing is pleasant, but costly. It spends the exact bandwidth they need to think, create, and make sense of their own experience. It's why so many of history's deepest thinkers guarded their solitude fiercely. Not arrogance, necessity. But here's the part one won't skip because it matters. Preferring solitude does not automatically make you more intelligent. Intelligence shows up in dozens of forms: emotional, relational, practical, creative, not just the kind that likes to be alone with a problem. Some minds process the world outward, some process it inward. Neither is better, but mistaking one for the other has made a lot of inward people carry shame they never earned. Quick pause, and I mean this the way I'd say it to a friend, not the way a channel usually says it. If you're sitting there thinking, this is me and I've never had language for it before, then this channel was built for the way your mind works. Not to fix you, not to change you, just to keep putting words to the things you've felt for years and never quite named. If that's landing, subscribe, quietly, just for yourself, so the next one finds you when you need it. Not for me, as a small way of saying, this part of me is worth understanding. And if any part of this has already felt like it was describing you, stay with me. Because the next part is where it stops being something you carry alone and starts to make sense. Here's what solitude actually does at the neurological level. When the outside demands drop away, the brain shifts into a different reward system. Instead of the high arousal hit of social feedback and novelty, it starts releasing the chemistry of focus, calm engagement, sustained attention. Someone in the community, I'll call him James, told me he only feels fully himself in the 2 hours he paints alone on a Sunday. No audience, no one to show, just him and the work, and time going soft around the edges. He used to feel almost guilty about how much he protected those 2 hours. Like it was selfish. It wasn't selfish. That state has a name, flow, and it's one of the most restorative things a human mind can do. But it has a condition. It can't happen in noise. It can't be forced. You can only build the conditions for it and step back. For James, those 2 hours aren't him hiding from his life. They're where he assembles the self he brings back to everyone else. That's what solitude is, at its best. Not an escape from life. The quiet room where life gets put back together, piece by piece, before you carry it back out into the world. But there's something honest I owe you here, because this is the part most videos like this leave out. Solitude can be a sanctuary. It can also quietly become armor, and the line between the two is thin enough that it's easy to cross without noticing. Healthy solitude is chosen. It restores you. It sharpens your sense of who you are and sends you back more grounded than before. But there's a point where solitude stops being about nourishment and starts being about protection, not from noise, from risk, from disappointment, from being misunderstood one more time. When that shift happens, the quiet stops feeling restful and starts feeling rigid. When the thought of reaching out doesn't feel neutral, but threatening, solitude has quietly turned into something else. The warning signs are quiet ones. The world getting smaller, your emotional range narrowing, slowly losing interest in being known at all. Even the most self-contained people need contact. Not a crowd, not constant connection, just a few real relationships where you don't have to perform or explain your wiring or be anyone but yourself. Solitude is meant to be a place you visit, not a place you disappear into. There's a kind of strength almost nobody celebrates. Not the strength of being seen, not the strength of being admired. The strength of being completely at ease in your own presence. When you're at peace alone, something fundamental changes. You stop chasing noise just to feel real. Your stability stops living out there in other people's reactions. It lives within. And strangely, that's when your connections get better, cleaner, calmer, more honest. Because you can walk into them without needing anyone to complete you. So if this video put words to something you've carried quietly for years, I want you to do one small thing. In the comments, leave a single line. It doesn't have to be polished or explained. Just one honest sentence about the moment you first realized you needed your own company more than most people seem to. You don't have to write it for anyone else. Sometimes just writing it down is the first time you let yourself believe it isn't a flaw. This channel is a space for people who feel the world deeply, quietly, and a little differently. If that's you, subscribe and stay a while. There's a lot here that's going to put words to things you've never quite been able to explain. And if you want to understand the other half of this, why the people with the highest IQs are so often the most emotionally sensitive, that one's right here. The two are connected in a way almost no one talks about. I'll see you there.